Brandon, what's up, man?
How's it going, Kevin? Not too much. Just beautiful Tuesday evening here in Brooklyn.
I was gonna ask, man, because I know that you're a partner at Vicente Sederberg, and you focus on Massachusetts and New York. So I was wondering, like, what state you were located in. So yeah, is it cool? And I mean, is it starting to really get chilly out there in New York this time of year, or
I mean, falls in the air. Falls in the air for sure. The leaves are changing, and bracing for northeast winter here. But you really gotta. What I've learned, I grew up in the South where it was always warm, and you come up
what
north.
state? What state in the
It's
South?
it's South Carolina, Charleston, South
Okay,
Carolina.
yeah.
And so when you come up north, you realize that you have to really embrace the fall, and it's a beautiful season because you still can go outside and you enjoy the changing leaves and Halloween and Thanksgiving, and it's sort of like the last the last period of enjoying the outside before the winter hits, and you got to really like hunker down.
Right. Yeah, yeah. You mentioned the changing of seasons and the fall time. I mean, I went to school in Pennsylvania, and you're so right. I'm from New Mexico originally, which is a desert, right? So not many seasons changing there, but being out in Pennsylvania and seeing those colors, and it was like something that you'd see in a coloring book, So with harsh winters, there are beautiful falls, right? You
For
always got to
sure,
kind
for
of
sure.
look to the positive.
Absolutely, absolutely. Fall's a great season. I understand why it's a lot of people's favorite. Although I'm a summer guy. It's through and through. Although I like try to do some skiing and stuff, but summer's where it's at for me.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you there, man. I love the sunshine. I love getting outdoors. So that's great, and I want to kind of kick this conversation off, Brandon, with talking about you, as I mentioned, briefly, you're a partner at Vicente Sederberg. You practice on regulatory and licensing matters in Massachusetts and New York, and we'll get into that. But I first want to, talk about, I guess, your background, what led you to the firm, and what your personal story with cannabis is. Like, why are you passionate about this?
Yeah, I mean, and sort of kind of growing up in South Carolina, which is, a very conservative state. It's still one of the states that still does not have even a medical program at this point. And I think that I guess I was introduced to the plant in high school, and
As most of us were, yeah.
it's kind of interesting. I kind of like in my relationship to cannabis, to like a long-term relationship with a significant other. And so we kind of like started off sort of hot and heavy in high school, and that passion continued through college, and and then in South Carolina growing up, I mean, we did not have access to good cannabis, or at least I did, and it was really like brick weed, dime bags,
Yeah.
swag. And then I went to school in the Northeast, and that's where I started to see that there was access to at least better types of cannabis. And some of my the kids that I went to college with, they would never smoke anything other than headies. And then interestingly enough, as relationships can sort of ebb and flow and get hot and cold, in law school, we kind of had a bit of a falling out. I didn't really use it as much. I just like, I kind of was stressed out with school. I felt that smoking kind of gave me anxiety, and we sort of, kind of broke up a little bit. And
Took a break, right?
we took a little break. We took a little break, and then
Look,
getting out.
it's not me, it's you.
Right, and I, it was hard for me because it was so passionate leading up to that point. I couldn't really figure it out. And then being in Massachusetts, after law school, and then sort of being a part of a regulated market. And, I was a medical patient at first, and really sort of having access to different type of edibles and dosing, and knowing exactly what it is I could take and what I was taking, and what the perceived effects were going to be. Really, we found love again, and the relationship turned to sort of a more mature relationship to where it is now. And so that's kind of like my personal story with cannabis. Kind of along the way, I kind of fell into cannabis law, which is an interesting part of the story.
Yeah. So but I definitely want to hear, before we jump into that real quickly, when you talk about like living in a state where it's regulated and you're able to kind of refine that passion, I got to tell you, I was so surprised, because I was reading up on, in preparation for this conversation about Massachusetts and ballot question 4, right? And it was passed, was it 6 years ago? So 2016?
Yep.
So, I mean, I guess, when did they actually go online with sales? Was it right off the bat, or did it take some time? It seems like, in my purview, that sales have just kind of started, but that's probably not right. I mean, how long have they been operating in Massachusetts?
So, I think that, and, don't hold me to these dates exactly, but I think that from the time that the question 4 passed, to the time the first retail store opened, it might have taken about a year and a half or 2 years. It was definitely a slow rollout. You go from the law to the regulations to to accepting applications, and there was the medical program, of course. So those licenses existed, but that was just medical, and it was vertically operated, and some folks didn't want to get their cards. So, but the adult use side took a bit of time, which in most new markets, I think that's kind of what we've come to see. There's there are always growing pains as folks try to figure it out for the first time.
Right. No, that makes sense. Yeah. And so, so now let's transition to kind of what you were saying earlier. So, going back to what led you to cannabis law, with your refound passion and love for the plant personally.
Yeah. So, I got out of law school in 2010. And the first 4 years of my career, the economy was terrible in 2010. I'd hung my own shingle, was really taking on just kind of anything that came across my desk. Some criminal defense, a lot of personal injury, landlord-tenant matters. And I was just kind of always had my ears open to new opportunities. I was told about a gentleman in Massachusetts who was practicing cannabis law, which piqued my interest, based on, my just general interest in cannabis. And he agreed to meet for sort of an informational session. We sat down and he kind of told me like what he was doing. And at the time he was helping clients in Massachusetts get medical licenses. And, he had an associate working for him at the time, but basically said, listen, if, you want to help out around the office, we could always use some extra hands. And so I more or less was, practicing and doing my own thing, and then kind of volunteering with, at his office. And then he partnered up with Vicente Sederberg's fledgling Massachusetts office, which was just my partner Adam Fine and our now head of Northeast licensing, Tim Callahan. And I sort of, because the guy who I've been volunteering with had already had an associate, and they decided to partner for this next round of medical licensing, I came on as the first associate contract employee for Vicente Sederberg's Massachusetts office. And we really just had a solid team. we got incredibly busy with folks trying to apply for the second round of licenses. It wasn't capped anymore at the state level. So, it was much more accessible. And then we grew from there. And, 2016 came around, we worked on the initiative, adult use happened. And then we just continued to grow and expand, working in, not only Massachusetts, but doing licensing in, a ton of different states. Anywhere that came online, we had just this incredible track record of winning these licenses for clients. And, the firm grew, I grew within the firm, and that's sort of how I got to where I am now.
How cool, man. So like you have a personal passion, right? That's kind of part of your lifestyle, and you've been able to marry that with your own profession and kind of focus and centralize on a burgeoning industry. That's something that you're in and you're excited about, on a personal level as well. It's really awesome. And I want to hear more about the process that you talked about, how Vicente Sederberg was so integral in, the negotiations when it came to ballot question 4 within Massachusetts and passing that legalization bill in 2016.
Yeah, so a few people in the firm, including Adam, served on the drafting committee for the ballot initiative. So they helped write the law, this was a law that was sponsored by the nonprofit Marijuana Policy Project, who does, they do great work, and they're responsible for a ton of the, legalization efforts throughout the country. Once the language was drafted, I got to be involved in this ballot initiative process, which I had never done anything like this before in my entire life. So it was like getting signatures, so that the ballot could actually be put on to get votes, and then to be considered. And so then after that, it turned into just like everything that goes into a contentious political campaign: fundraising, grassroots outreach. We were going around, knocking on people's doors saying, hey, like, here are the SM4 campaign. What are your thoughts on marijuana? And it was really.
Do you have any crazies that were like, that's the devil's lettuce, get off our doorstep? Like any, what was that kind of feedback?
The way that they do it, in terms of finding the areas of it's sort of like they know, based on these softwares that they're using, they know sort of the areas where there are voters that sort of lean towards voting yes, and it's like supporting. So it's like this person, has a liberal voting record, but doesn't have a very consistent voting history. So the idea is that if you can get these one-on-one touches and encourage them to actually show up at the voting, on voting day, then you'll be able to win them over. So I don't think that, I don't recall any doors slammed in my face. I think that I really started to see that side of things once we started to open up dispensaries in communities. But for the most part, some people were, I think most people were kind of open to the conversation, or fairly polite about, not being interested, or just like didn't answer their doors at all.
I asked because like my dad has run 2 campaigns in my lifetime, and like we've done the grassroots, like knocking on doors, getting support, and you just never know what you're gonna get. Like you're you know what I mean, you're out there and you're meeting the people, which is a good thing, because most of them appreciate the fact that you're passionate about an issue either way, and most people are good, right? So they'll listen, and even if they don't maybe agree or not, but I'm just curious. So
there was
awesome that you did that.
There was I don't remember what the software was, and I think that you get these all the time now with campaigns. You get these like text messages like, hey, I'm from the Elizabeth Warren campaign, just seeing what's going on, are you going to vote?
Right.
And so we had this technology and these like long voter lists. And so you use the software to like text people and be like, hi, I'm Brandon from the like Yes I'm For campaign. And we got a lot of opposition there because a lot of people were like, where'd you get my number? Like, what's going,
Privacy, yeah.
And so they had the ability to call you and you could pick up and talk to them if you wanted. And for the most part, I was just like, I'm not, it's like, I'll just like move on to the next person. I don't want to like, get into it. And so there was a lot of like, there were a lot of people that were upset that I was like, intruding on their, personal space with these text messages. So that was also, that was pretty interesting, but the technology was incredible. And now I think it's pretty much ubiquitous with any political campaign. It's just a part of it.
Right. I mean, yeah. And I mean, the lesson there is just don't put your email anywhere because like, sooner or later it ends up in some list where they're going to use it. So yeah, that's just the way the world works today. I totally get it. So let's talk about present day now, Brandon. So your team has 8 offices across the country. Or I guess Vicente Sederberg does, excuse me. So what, talk to me about kind of the current operations, what your focus is, the services you offer, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, I mean, so when I got into it and we first started, I kind of labeled myself as like a sort of like a cannabis generalist. And we, we were really kind of like handling all sorts of, any legal issue that kind of came in, like having to do with the business. So, people would have corporate issues or, regulatory questions or employment law. There was a lot of real estate involved, finding properties, negotiating leases, working with the administrators, the, municipal side, dealing with the municipalities and whatever their process was to get approvals. And so, my practice has kind of evolved to where I really do more like compliance and regulatory issues, kind of quarterback licensing processes, interpret the regulations, deal with clients that have regulatory deficiencies, and what the practice as a whole though has become more of a traditional law firm in the sense that we have a municipal side, we have a corporate side, we have regulatory compliance, and so now the firm sort of serves as a kind of a more or less a full service law firm where somebody who is in the cannabis industry as a plant touching licensee or trying to get a license or already has a license can come in with more or less any type of legal issue, and we can help them with whatever they're dealing with, and that's where the kind of the firm stands today, where we still do a ton of licensing and regulatory work to help folks get licenses and get off the ground, and that's what we're largely doing in New York right now in new markets, but in more in more evolved markets like Massachusetts, you're really dealing more with operational issues for people that are up and running, compliance issues and audits, which is a huge part of the practice now. On the corporate side of things, people are buying and selling licenses or trying to raise money for expansion in other states, branding and licensing deals, trademark issues. It really runs the gamut, which is pretty exciting to see that the firm and the attorneys and the matters that we are dealing with just have become more sophisticated as the industry has become more sophisticated.
Yeah, I mean, adapt or die, right? Excuse me. And like that's kind of the model you have to have in this industry. And it's as you're talking, I'm sitting back and I'm thinking, gosh, it's so interesting the world that you kind of live in right now, because you've got two like extremes in both cases. You've got New York and Massachusetts, where, like you said, Massachusetts is a very established, mature market, been around since 2016. Whereas New York is still, getting the ball rolling to eventually go online for sales. So
right.
let's start with New York. I mean, what are some of the the regulatory challenges that your clients are seeing in New York, and even maybe some licensing challenges as well.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge that I think New York clients or entrepreneurs in New York are facing is that there aren't a full set of regulations yet dealing with the majority of the licenses that will be available. Up to this point, there really only have been 3 licensing rounds for these conditional cultivation licenses for folks that previously had hemp licenses in New York, conditional processing licenses for folks that had hemp processing, and then yesterday was the deadline for the conditional adult use retail licenses, which will be the first retail licenses that are up and running. And so for everybody else that wants to get involved on cultivation, on processing, on distribution, or retail or social use, we still are waiting to see what the process is going to be, when they're going to accept applications, what the applications are going to look like. And that's the biggest challenge when you're trying to plan for what's this going to cost me, where can I go, how many licenses can I have. When I talk to new clients who want to get involved in New York, I'm just like, well, there's a lot of unknowns right now, so we have to wait around and see what happens.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of what I've heard. There's been a really slow process in terms of issuing those licenses. And there's a big line of other people in various categories, social equity included, that are looking for licenses as well. So, I mean, how are you and your team kind of helping navigate through that process? I mean, I guess it's kind of a wait and kind of be patient, but then once the floodgates open, there's got to be a plan of action, or.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, whenever we talk to a new client, there are certainly things that you can do to prepare. And, I think that the general things that we would say to somebody who, let's say, wants to get a cultivation license, but, we don't have regulations for cultivation licenses yet in New York. I mean, regardless of what the regulations say, you're going to need a entity formed. You're going to have to think about your team and the expertise that you're going to need in order to run this business successfully. So, lawyers, accountants, the experts who know how to grow the good marijuana. And then, another big aspect is fundraising. It's like, start raising the money. How are you going to raise the money? How are you going to structure your financing and bringing in the necessary funds to do this properly. So there certainly are things that you can start to think about. Where do you want to be? Does the municipality have regulations yet in terms of, allowing or disallowing, or where you can be located? So you can take steps to prepare so that when the regulations drop, you're sort of ready to go. So that's one aspect of working with clients. The second is working with the clients that do qualify for the licenses are currently available, and that's just a matter of helping them through the licensing process, and if they've awarded a license, working with them to deal with the operational plans and the environmental plans and the things that they're going to need to be compliant operators as the market evolves here.
Right. Which is an ever evolving thing in itself, right? I mean, the goalpost tends to kind of move in these adult use states when it comes to regulatory compliance, labeling, just various things like you talked about earlier. Well, let's switch gears and talk about the current state of Massachusetts's cannabis program, and how some of the challenges that your clients see there, and how you're helping them navigate through those challenges.
Yeah, so Massachusetts, I'd say is definitely a much more mature market, and it's been like sort of watching your baby grow up. And so, you know, up to this point, or up to the last legislative session, there were still no regulations or no ability for folks to apply for the final category of licenses in Massachusetts, which was the social use license. So the legislator finally passed a law this legislative session, which is going to allow for social use. So and you know, so what we're going to do is basically start from scratch with these, you know, social use clients to help them find locations and help them go through the licensing process from scratch.
When you say social use, sorry to cut you off. When you say social use, that's a new term to me. Is that exclusive to Massachusetts? What does that mean exactly?
Like cannabis lounges.
Okay, consumption lounges. Okay, so
yeah.
like on property consumption. Okay.
Right. And you know, so I think up to this point, if you're trying to get a license in Massachusetts, sort of the most controversial ones were retail licenses. And you know, anytime you would go into a municipality, for the most part, you know, you're always going to get opposition from abutters and people that are against the use. And so we always would, you know, and this is where, you know, I would show up at municipal hearings, trying to get a special permit or trying to, you know, do what it's a requirement in Mass to do these like community outreach meetings where it's a state requirement where you go in and you're just like, hey, you know, we want to open a dispensary like in your neighborhood, and people just you know, have this public forum to say, you know, no, we don't want this, and you have to address all of people's concerns. So now that's going to happen, but with you know, with a place where people can go and smoke marijuana or use marijuana in, you know, in this facility. And so if you can imagine like somebody trying to open up a, you know, a bar or a club, like you're going to see just like a ton of opposition. So, you know, we're certainly excited about that, you know, excited for that challenge, but finally seeing the, you know, these final licenses come to fruition. Delivery just happened, you know, basically starting last year. You know, we have the first delivery licenses that were available on the adult use side, and helping, and those were social equity license. So we dealt with, you know, we took on a lot of clients and did a ton of you know, a ton of pro bono work representing social equity clients to get these delivery licenses and get those up and running. So, you know, and now we're starting to see those businesses actually open up and delivery happening. So, so it's, you know, the challenges that you see in a more mature market are you know, at least for people that are running their businesses, is, you know, they deal with the regulators on a regular basis. And, you know, there are audits, there are inspections, there are, as you were saying, like labeling issues, marketing and advertising issues, you know, issues with, you know, pesticides, really everything that goes into, you know, having a highly regulated industry. You know, the regulators are coming in and saying, no, you're doing X, Y, and Z wrong, and here's a deficiency, and then we're responding to the deficiency and trying to, you know, trying to smooth things over when things go bad. But really, what we like to do is work with our clients to prevent things from going bad to begin with, which is always better than, you know, doing it right from the outset is always easier than clean up in the end or after something happens. So, so that's what we see. It's you know, a lot more. You know, we have a really strong compliance team. These are a lot of non-attorneys that come in. They do audits on really all aspects of the business across the supply chain to make sure that that they're doing, you know, that operators are doing things the way that they're supposed to do things and are staying compliant, so that they really stay out of trouble and run successful businesses.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it when you said like it's better to kind of get ahead of these things than work your way back. And like we've said before on this podcast, I mean, regulations coming, right? Like even like when we talk about it from the hemp industry standpoint, like there's a lot of lack of enforcement of regulation in some capacity. You got lab shopping and other things, but the labs that are doing it correctly, shout out to New Bloom Labs and others, right? Like they're proactive, they're ahead of what's coming, because um, it's inevitable. I mean, this is going to be, it's already is a highly regulated industry, but it's going to be even further. So Brandon, as we wrap up, I want to ask you, like, what are your plans like upcoming? What is the future hold, I guess, for your particular, area of Vicente Sederberg? And is there plans, I guess, for the firm as a whole to really focus on expanding to other states, you in particular, outside of the Northeast?
I mean, for now, I mean, my personal plans are, it's like a second child in New York, and I hope to, I really hope to help folks get licenses in New York and be a part of, what is, kind of shaping up to be like the biggest or most influential cannabis market in the world. And so just being a part of that, and working with the clients to find success here, and to create a thoughtful program in this state is super exciting. And I think that what I'm doing in New York, my colleagues are doing elsewhere in the other states that are starting to take off and have expanding regulatory industries. I mean, Michigan, and I mean, there's licensing in Georgia that we've worked on, and Mississippi. We just won a license in Florida. So it's really, wherever the industry is expanding on the medical or adult use front, Vicente Sederberg will be there to keep the fight, to keep the fight going, and to help folks find success. I mean, that's really what we've based the success of the firm on, and where we've shined. So it's exciting to see the expansion. There's international prospects, and other countries learning from the rights and the wrongs of how things have been done in states in the U.S. So we really have our eye on all sort of cannabis opportunities in states, and want to be a part of them as a firm.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, I mean, firms like Vicente Sederberg are essential. They're needed in industries like cannabis, because, to your point, there is a fight that's going on right now. And, we need that type of legal expertise in such a dicey, complex, highly regulated industry. So I know it's very much appreciated, the work that you do, and the team overall does at Vicente Sederberg. And I just want to commend you, Brandon, because I can sense the passion, like when you talk about New York being this second baby, and like the focus, and just like it oozes out, because you really are a person of the plant. And there's always that talk of like new entrants coming into the industry, and do they even have a relationship with cannabis? Do they know what it's about? Do they know the culture, the history? And you obviously do. And it's good that we got you on our side, man. So appreciate your time and the insights you've shared today. Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
I mean, I think I just just give a shout out to the team and my coworkers, and everybody that I work with. I mean, it really just is been made this journey so much more incredible for me to like do it with people that are so smart, and so passionate, and so dedicated to to this industry, and to what they do. And for anybody out there who is looking for help, they could as an experienced operator, or they, they just have it's a twinkle in their eye and a dream to get involved. I mean, I just, it's been amazing to be a part of a place that has helped so many folks get from, that dream to, a successful cannabis business. So, definitely reach out to us if that's what you're looking for.
That's great, man. Yeah, no, great way to end it. And where can people find, either your personal social media or Vicente Sederberg's if they want to learn more, website information, anything that you want to kind of mention?
Yeah, so I'm on the LinkedIn. You can definitely, hook up with me there. My, firm website is a great resource. We have a ton of webinars, and we put out a lot of content on all of the different stuff that were discussed here. Tri-state stuff, New York stuff, Massachusetts stuff. In addition to all the other states that we work on, hemp and CBD, we have a big practice. The psychedelic stuff too now, which is just a whole other, a whole other world.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
I didn't know that y'all are involved in that as well. That's great.
Yeah. So the website's great. Check out our webinars. Check out our Instagram presence. There's good stuff on that. Good stuff on LinkedIn. And you really don't have to look too hard to find VS. Where we try to stay pretty involved in the market and get the message out there.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'll be sure to drop those links within the YouTube chat comment box as well, so people can find it very easy. But yeah, like I said, Brandon, really appreciate your time today. This has been great. Would love to have you back on as the two babies grow. And yeah, man, we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I hope we have a good relationship still, and I haven't talked to my first kid in 2 years, no, I don't think so. I think it's, we're going to continue to have a loving relationship, and I'm very excited to be a part of it.
No deadbeat daddies.
No. I'm probably too involved.
You're gonna be a helicopter parent. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So,
right on.
Well, Kevin, yeah, thanks a lot for having me on.
Yeah, man. No, absolutely. And thank you all for listening. Bye.